As a society, how do we collectively decide what's good or bad? What's attractive or undesirable? What makes you a success or a failure? And ultimately, how does this affect you as an individual? All too often, we can trace this back to values imposed on us in our adolescence. As a kid, I was like a sponge, and I was constantly soaking in what I thought would be accepted or rejected by the people around me. And I constantly recall the word gay as a nerve-inducing trigger that would make my stomach twist. Looking back on this, I asked myself why. I was too young to have any established sexual orientation. I didn't even know what sex was. But one thing that was clear to me by the age of 5 or 6 was that gay was seen as bad. It would be used as an adjective for things kids didn't like or something that they perceived as stupid, and very quickly, I knew that I didn't want to be that. As a young boy, I didn't fit the classic male mold of only hanging out with guys and wrestling and playing with trucks. I liked playing with dolls and jewels and hanging out with girls. And at the time, I felt nothing wrong with this. I didn't really feel any different than my peers. But my peers definitely felt different than me. Looking back on this, it's so interesting now that I study communication because I can now conceptualize certain things that shape the process of my identity and sexuality in ways I could have never understood before. Even when I was younger, I freely expressed myself, paying little attention to others' perceptions, but I quickly picked up on negative reactions to my behavior that was outside the lines of traditional masculinity. This is connected to a concept called social learning theory. Out of curiosity, raise your hand if you're familiar with this concept. Okay, good amount. So social learning theory explains that an individual learns to be masculine or feminine through imitating the behavior of the people around them and seeing the reactions they have to this behavior. This could be through the TV or imitating your parents or your friends, but not all of this imitated behavior is rewarded. So we often see that boys are rewarded with the label of being a man when they imitate masculine behavior. But what happens when a boy imitates feminine behavior? Let me tell you a story. So as a 6-year-old in summer camp, I thought the counselors in training were the absolute coolest. I always followed around this group of 11-year-olds, and I really wanted to be friends with them, especially the girls. One day, the girls were discussing shopping, and I told them I like shopping too. They looked at each other, but I didn't think much of it. Later that day, I was still following them around, and mind you, I was so much smaller that half the time they didn't even notice I was with them. But I remember overhearing their conversation clear as day. Oh, that kid Koosha is so gay, he likes shopping. As a 6-year-old, I was perplexed, but I felt a sting in my stomach, as if I was just punched. Why did I feel so terrible? Why did my behavior bother them so badly? This connects back to social learning theory because the big kids were essentially communicating their disapproval of my behavior being outside the lines of masculinity and hurdling a label to let me know that it wasn't okay. I could tell you 100 different variations of this story because it happened to me so often. But every single time, the notion that I needed to act like a man was further reinforced. So in other words, my identity, or who I thought I should be, was constantly being reinforced through my communication with others. This ties into another concept called symbolic interactionism. This concept really complements social learning theory in explaining the role of communication in our gender development. So this communication is heavily culture-laden in ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman. And in my case, I quickly learned that being a man and being gay were mutually exclusive. Even when I was younger, I always had a weird feeling when I knew that something was off, when they would be evaluating my behavior or personality in a strange way, and it definitely gave me a feeling that I was less. So it's no secret that the United States is a heteronormative society, meaning there's a collective view that promotes heterosexuality as the normal or preferred sexual orientation, ultimately excluding anything that doesn't fit in this heteronormative box. This could be seen through the perfect dream couple always being seen as a man and a woman, or the ideal man always thought of as a strong, macho husband with a wife and kids. Therefore, it's understandable when kids and young adults react negatively to anything that's outside of their perceived normal. And through our society defining normalcy through only straight people, we directly create a set of roles, expected behaviors, and values that we constantly reinforce through our communication with others. Because these expected roles and behaviors were imposed on me in my adolescence, I completely lost my identity in the process of trying to cover up certain personality traits and trying to compensate in other ways to fit the societal role of the ideal man. The good news is that through academics, I've been enlightened by realizing that these expected behaviors and values are merely social constructs established and perpetuated through communication. And in realizing this, I spoke my own world into existence, one in which I found my identity, one that doesn't define me based on how macho I am or the people that I love. And through finding my identity, I developed a confidence that fully allowed me to embrace myself. And with this new confidence and knowledge, my perspective on the world completely changed. And looking with this new perspective, I realized how lost I was as a kid. And through reflection and education, I found my identity. So how do we empower young boys to make them feel like they can be themselves without feeling less than the people around them? We have to acknowledge the existence of these constructs and biases at a younger age in order to promote understanding. Because the key to acceptance is understanding, and the key to understanding is education. Thank you.